I found the envelope on the kitchen counter at 7 in the morning, propped against the coffee maker I had set to brew before dawn. The paper was cream-colored, expensive. Her handwriting across the front said only my first name. Inside, a single sheet explained that she had retained an attorney and would be filing for divorce within 30 days unless I agreed to sell the firm and commit to a structured work-life balance plan she had drafted with her therapist. The document was attached. It included a proposed schedule limiting me to 40 hours per week and mandatory weekend retreats. At the bottom, she had written in pen, "I'm done being invisible." I set the letter down and poured my coffee. Through the window above the sink, the sky was still gray. The house was silent. She had left for her sister's place the night before, taking 2 suitcases and our son's dog. I had been in the office until midnight, reviewing quarterly projections. I had not heard her leave. I read the letter again. The language was careful, rehearsed. This was not impulse, this was a campaign. I had been building the consulting firm for 11 years. When I started, we lived in a rented duplex and drove cars with peeling paint. I worked from a card table in the spare bedroom, cold-calling executives and writing proposals until my wrists ached. She had been proud then. She told her friends I was going to make it. That first year I brought in $60,000. The second year, twice that. By year 5, we bought the house. By year 8, I hired a team. By year 11, we had 16 consultants, 7-figure contracts, and a reputation that opened doors across 3 states. She stopped asking about the work around year 6. Somewhere between the second employee and the first major contract, her interest shifted to absence. Dinner conversations became audits of my time. Why was I late? Why did I check email at breakfast? Why did I take calls on Sunday? I answered honestly. The work required it. Clients expected responsiveness. Competitors did not rest. She said I was choosing the business over her. I said I was choosing our future. She said the future was now, and I was missing it. I did not argue. I worked. The morning after I found the letter, I called my attorney. His name was Malcolm Driscoll, a man in his 60s with silver hair and the calm of someone who had seen every version of human breakdown. I had used him for contract work and business formations. I met him at his office at 9. I brought the letter. He read it without expression, then set it on his desk between us. "She's serious." "I know. Do you want to fight this?" I thought about the question. Fight implied opposition, a contest of wills. That was not what I wanted. I want to protect what I built. She'll go after half the firm's value. Community property. You started it during the marriage. I know. You could settle? Give her the house? Keep the business? Write a check for the difference? I shook my head. She doesn't want money. She wants leverage. Malcolm leaned back in his chair. Then you need to change the game. I spent the next 2 days reviewing the firm's structure. We were organized as a limited liability company, a straightforward setup that served us well but offered little complexity. The equity was simple. I owned 100%. On paper, everything was clean. In a divorce, that clarity would cost me. I called my accountant. Her name was Diane, a woman in her 40s who wore glasses on a chain and kept her office cold enough to require a sweater year-round. I trusted her because she never made assumptions. She worked with numbers and asked questions only when the numbers failed to answer them. I met her on a Thursday afternoon. I brought coffee for both of us and a legal pad covered in notes. She looked at the pad, then at me. "You're restructuring." "Yes." "Why?" "My wife is filing for divorce. I need the firm protected." Diane took off her glasses and cleaned them with the corner of her cardigan. "Protected how?" I explained the situation, the ultimatum, the threat. the pattern of resentment that had built over years. Diane listened without interrupting. When I finished, she put her glasses back on and opened her laptop. "You have options," she said. "None of them are simple." She walked me through scenarios. I could convert the LLC to a corporation and issue shares. I could establish a trust. I could bring in a partner to dilute ownership. Each option had consequences, tax implications, risks. I took notes. Diane spoke in the language of spreadsheets and statutory codes, a precision I appreciated. Then she said something that shifted the room. "You could make her a member." I stopped writing. "What?" "Restructure the LLC. Add her as a non-managing member. Give her equity but no control. If she's a member, the firm becomes a shared asset. She can't force a sale without your consent, and if she divorces you, her share stays locked in. You control operations. She owns a percentage of something she can't touch." I thought about it. The idea had a symmetry that appealed to me. She wanted me to give up the firm. Instead, I would give her a piece of it, a piece she could not escape. "How much equity?" I asked. 30%, Diane said. "Enough to feel significant, not enough to challenge you." "And if she refuses?" "Then you document the offer. When this goes to court, you show you tried to include her. Judges like good faith." I left Diane's office with a plan. That night, I drafted the restructuring documents. I kept the language simple. The firm would remain an LLC. I would retain 70% ownership and full management authority. She would receive 30% as a non-managing member, entitled to distributions, but barred from operational decisions. The equity would vest over 3 years, contingent on the marriage remaining intact. If she filed for divorce, the unvested portion would revert to me. If she stayed, the full 30% would be hers, locked into a structure that required unanimous consent to dissolve. It was a cage built from opportunity. I met with Malcolm again the following Monday. He reviewed the documents with the care of a jeweler examining a stone. After 20 minutes, he looked up. "This is clean," he said. "Aggressive, but clean." "Will it hold?" "If she signs, yes. If she doesn't, you're in the same position you're in now. But if she does, you've just made her dependent on the business she wants you to abandon." "That's the point." Malcolm smiled, a thin expression without warmth. "She's going to hate this." "I know." I sent the proposal to her attorney on Tuesday morning. I included a cover letter explaining the restructuring as an act of partnership, a way to honor her concern about balance by giving her a stake in what I had built. I wrote that I valued her support and wanted her to share in the success she had helped make possible. I kept the tone respectful, almost conciliatory. The letter read like an olive branch. The documents beneath it were binding steel. Her attorney called Malcolm 2 days later. The conversation lasted 15 minutes. Malcolm relayed it to me that afternoon. "She's confused," he said. "She doesn't understand why you'd give her equity." "Did her attorney explain it?" "He tried. She thinks it's a trap." "It is." "He wants a meeting, face to face. You, her, both attorneys." "When?" "Friday, 2 o'clock. I agreed. The meeting took place in a conference room at her attorney's office, a renovated historic building downtown with tall windows and oak paneling that smelled faintly of lemon polish. I arrived early. Malcolm and I sat on one side of a long table. She arrived 10 minutes late with her attorney, a man in his 50s named Robert Klein, who wore a charcoal suit and a wedding band polished to a mirror finish. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back, and she wore no jewelry except the ring she had not yet removed. She did not look at me when she sat down. Klein opened a folder and placed the restructuring documents on the table between us. "Mr. Driscoll, your client's proposal is unusual." Malcolm nodded. It's a good faith offer. It's a tether, Klein said. You're giving my client equity in a company she's asked him to leave. She asked him to find balance, Malcolm said. This gives her a financial interest in the business. If it succeeds, she benefits. That's partnership. Klein looked at her. She was staring at the documents, her jaw tight. When she spoke, her voice was low and measured. You think this is funny? I met her eyes. No. You think you can buy me off? I think you deserve to share in what we built. We didn't build this. You did. Alone. That's the problem. I did not respond. Klein cleared his throat. My client wants the work to stop, he said. She wants her husband present. This proposal does the opposite. It ties her to the business permanently. Only if she wants the equity, Malcolm said. She can decline. And then what? Klein asked. Then we proceed with divorce proceedings, and the court divides the assets. She'll get a payout, but no ongoing stake. This way she has security. Klein leaned back in his chair. Or she has a chain. The room went quiet. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw something I had not expected. Not anger, not betrayal, calculation. How much is 30% worth? She asked. Based on current valuations, Malcolm said, approximately 2.4 million. Her expression did not change. And if I sign, I get that over 3 years. Correct. Contingent on the marriage. And if I file for divorce? You forfeit the unvested portion. She looked at Klein, then back at me. You want me to stay married to keep the money. I want you to be invested in our future, I said. You want me trapped. I want you to see what this business makes possible. She stood abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. I need to think. Klein stood with her. We'll be in touch. They left. Malcolm and I sat in the empty conference room. Through the windows, I could see the street below, people moving through the afternoon light, unaware of the careful architecture being assembled in rooms like this. She'll sign, Malcolm said. Why? Because 2.4 million is more than she'd get in a settlement, and she knows it. She'll convince herself she can outlast you. Can she? Malcolm smiled. That's not a legal question. I drove home through streets I had known for years, past landmarks that marked the measured expansion of my life. The dry cleaner where I picked up shirts every Monday. The coffee shop where I met clients before the office opened. The park where I used to take my son before he grew old enough to prefer his friends. I had built routines that served a singular purpose: efficiency, progress, the elimination of waste. She called me that night at 10. I was in my home office, reviewing a proposal for a new contract. Her voice came through the speaker on my desk, flat and deliberate. I'll sign, she said. Okay. But I want conditions. What conditions? I want quarterly reports. I want to see the financials. I want to understand what I'm tied to. You'll get them. And I want you home for dinner. 3 nights a week, non-negotiable. I thought about it. 3 nights was manageable. It would require adjustments, delegations, a tighter schedule. But it was possible. Agreed, I said. And one more thing. What? I want you to admit this is about control. I leaned back in my chair. The office was dark except for the lamp on my desk. Outside, the neighborhood was silent. I could hear her breathing through the phone, waiting. It's about protection, I said. Same thing. No, control is about power. Protection is about boundaries. You're splitting hairs. I'm being precise. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'll sign tomorrow. She hung up. The signing took place the following afternoon in Malcolm's office. She arrived alone. Klein had reviewed the documents and advised her to proceed. She signed each page without reading them again, her handwriting steady and deliberate. When she finished, Malcolm notarized the documents and placed them in a folder. "Congratulations," he said. "You're now a member of the firm." She looked at me. "I still think you're wrong." "About what?" "About all of it. The hours, the priorities, the way you measure success." "Maybe," I said. "But now you're invested in finding out." She left without another word. Malcolm handed me a copy of the signed documents. I placed them in my briefcase and walked out into the afternoon light. The air was cool, the sky clear. I felt the weight of what had just happened, the careful lock clicking into place. She was bound now, not by love or loyalty, but by structure. By the same logic that had built the firm, I had built a boundary she could not cross without cost. Over the following months, the arrangement settled into routine. I came home for dinner 3 nights a week. We sat across from each other at the table and spoke about ordinary things, the weather, the news, plans for the weekend. The conversations were civil, transactional. She asked about the firm occasionally, and I answered with the honesty the documents required. Revenue was up. We had signed 2 new contracts. The team was expanding. She received her first quarterly distribution in December. The check arrived in the mail, made out to her name, a sum that represented her 30% share of the firm's profit for the quarter. She opened the envelope at the kitchen table while I made coffee. She looked at the check for a long time, then set it down. "This is real," she said. "Yes. I didn't think it would be this much. The firm is doing well." She looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something that resembled respect. Not warmth, not affection, but acknowledgement. "You planned this," she said. "I protected what I built. You made me complicit. I made you a partner." She folded the check and placed it back in the envelope. "I don't know if I can forgive you." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I said. "I'm asking for understanding." "Of what?" "That the work was never about choosing the firm over you. It was about building something that couldn't be taken away." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, the yard was brown with winter, the trees bare against a pale sky. She stood there for a long time, her arms crossed, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "I wanted you to choose me," she said quietly. "I did," I said. "This is what that looks like." She did not respond. She left the room, and I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of a door closing. I poured my coffee and returned to my office. The work continued. It always did. By the end of the first year, she had stopped, threatening divorce. The checks kept coming, each one a reminder of the structure we now shared. She began attending firm events, standing beside me at dinners and receptions, playing the role of supportive spouse with a precision that mirrored my own. People assumed we had reconciled. In a sense, we had. Not through affection, but through alignment. She hired a financial advisor to help her manage the distributions. She opened investment accounts. She began attending workshops on wealth management and estate planning. The money had given her something she had not expected: agency. She was no longer waiting for me to change. She was building her own foundation, using the same tools I had used. One evening, nearly 18 months after she signed the documents, she came into my office and sat in the chair across from my desk. I looked up from my laptop. "I need to tell you something," she said. "What?" "I understand now." "Understand what?" "Why you worked the way you did. Why you couldn't stop. Why you chose this." I waited. "It's not about the money," she said. "It's about the control. Knowing you built something that depends on you, that needs you, that proves you matter. And I was asking you to give that up without offering anything in return. I wanted you to prove you loved me by abandoning the thing that made you who you are. I closed my laptop. What changed? The money, she said. Having my own stake. My own proof that I matter. I spent years resenting you for having something I didn't understand. Now I have a piece of it, and I see why you couldn't let go. Does that mean you forgive me? She smiled, a small, tired expression. No, but it means I understand you. It was not reconciliation. It was truce. And in the careful architecture of our lives, that was enough. The firm continued to grow. We hired more consultants. We expanded into new markets. The quarterly distributions increased. She began contributing ideas, asking questions during my updates, suggesting connections and strategies. She was not involved in operations, but she was invested in outcomes. The equity had given her reason to care, and caring had given her purpose. 2 years after she signed the documents, we sat together at the kitchen table on a Saturday morning. The house was quiet. Our son was away at college. The dog slept in a patch of sunlight near the door. She was reading the quarterly report I had prepared, her reading glasses perched on her nose. We cleared $3 million this quarter, she said. Yes. My share is $900,000. Correct. She set the report down. You turned me into a capitalist. I turned you into a partner. Same thing. I smiled. Maybe. She looked at me across the table, and in her eyes I saw the thing I had been seeking all along. Not love, not forgiveness, but recognition. She saw what I had built. She understood the cost. And she was bound to it now, not by obligation, but by interest. Do you regret it? I asked. What? Signing. She thought about it. No, I resented it at first. I felt trapped. But now I see it differently. You didn't trap me. You gave me something I didn't know I wanted. What's that? A reason to stay that wasn't about you. It was the truest thing she had said in years. We finished our coffee in silence. Outside, the morning light stretched across the lawn, long and golden. The work continued. The distributions arrived. The firm grew. And in the careful balance we had constructed, we found not happiness, but stability. A marriage built not on passion, but on shared investment. A partnership defined not by emotion, but by equity. She never threatened to leave again. I never stopped working. And in the end, the company I built to protect myself became the thing that bound us together. A structure too valuable to abandon, too complex to escape. She had wanted me to choose her over the work. Instead, I made the work something she could not afford to leave. It was not the ending she had imagined, but it was the one I had built. And in the quiet morning light, with the quarterly reports spread between us and the future secured by careful planning and binding documents, it was enough. I had won. Not through force or deception, but through structure. Through the same methodical approach I had applied to every contract, every negotiation, every choice that mattered. I had built something that could not be taken from me, and in doing so, I had built something she could not leave. The coffee grew cold in our cups. The dog stirred and settled again. She returned to reading the report, her pen moving across the pages, making notes in the margins. I opened my laptop and returned to work. The rhythm was familiar. The silence was comfortable. And in that moment, in the architecture of what we had become, I understood that this was the only version of partnership I had ever truly wanted, one where the terms were clear, where the boundaries were defined, where love was optional, but equity was binding. And she had signed.